Welcome back, everybody. We are on mini session 19, which means this mini session is old enough to vote. So get out there and vote. And I promise you won't be audited down the street. This session came up because we got a call from a district a few weeks ago asking about House Bill 2268, which requires school districts and charter schools to issue compensation statements to employees every year. It was kind of a surprise to us. We were kind of caught off guard. Looking into it, it doesn't really seem like anything to make a big deal about it. Compensation statements have remained basically the same in Infinite Visions. And I talked about it a little bit earlier. I found the PowerPoint I did on compensation statements from 2013. It remains basically unchanged since then. There's a new feature here or there that I'll kind of talk you through, but for the most part, it's relatively easy to set up. I'll walk you through a couple different ways to set it up, but first I want to kind of touch on this House bill really quick, and I'm going to open up and share my screen here as soon as I can find my Zoom meeting. All right, everybody should be able to see my Infinite Vision screen right now. Go ahead and give me a little wave if you can see it, okay? Okay, now put your hands down. You look silly just waving to yourself. So I want to minimize this. I opened it up in a browser here. This is House Bill 2268. It went through, it was sent off to the governor in April and signed. So I am going to scroll down, and the part we're looking at, if I'm going to scroll down, I think it's item number 45 or 46, which should tell you all you need to know, the fact that there's 45 or 46 lines in this. And it's this part right here. Let me see if I can scrunch this and make this a little better. All right. I'll just try and break it down here. I know not everything's on the screen, but let me try and read it to you. Each fiscal year provide, so it is a fiscal year thing. So we talked about W-2s being calendar year. A compensation statement should be a fiscal year thing. So each fiscal year provide to each school district employee total compensation statement with items broken down by category. So this is things like your base salary, any additional pay, any performance pay, type of items, the benefits for any medical benefits or any additional benefits that are paid for by the employer should be included on there, which includes retirement, any legally required benefits. So think of Social Security, Medicare type thing, workers' comp, all that stuff that there is an employer side portion for. And the little stickler in here is any paid leave. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but any paid leave on there and any other payment made to on or behalf of the employee. And that again, that's House Bill 2268. Feel free to look it up on azledge.gov for yourself if you want to take a look. There's not much to it. It's pretty, it doesn't go down into very much detail beyond that or any detail beyond that. So the cool thing is Infinite Visions already supports this right out of the box, and it has supported this for a number of years. I don't know the reason why it was put into law. It seems kind of like an over legislation, if you ask me, but it's there. We have to apply, we have to abide by it. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to walk you through how to create compensation statements in Infinite Visions. So I'm going to open up Infinite Visions again. And I'm going to minimize everything down here. So for all you payroll people out there and you that may only have access to payroll, you're not going to be able to do some of these things in here. Compensation statements is going to be in human resources. We'll drill down into there under reports and under its own little folder for compensation statements. There's not a whole lot to it. There's only 4 screens in here, and 2 of them you really don't need to touch more than once. So I'm going to scroll up here. And I'm going to start with setting up the compensation statement. So I'm going to click on the compensation statement setup. Pull up the screen here, and I filled this out. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you guys can get a better look at the text that I'm looking at. All right, so everyone can see my screen here. it breaks down, you really just filling in text because this is your general standard filler text on what's going to show up on the statement. So your report title, you can have total compensation statement. You can put your district name in there, whatever you want in there. Again, it's just a report title. It's not a big deal. The reporting period, you can put any text in there. So make sure you double check that, because if you're looking at this, this is one of those things that you will kind of, if you put it in 2021, it will automatically put it in 21-22 for you. So that's nice. Just make sure you update that school year in there. It doesn't drive the data on the report. It's just sort of header information. So you can put anything in there, but just make sure, you know, it's kind of makes sense to whatever you happen to be generating. The header text, this is going to show up at the top of the compensation statement. You can put anything in there. Again, try and be generic, because it's certain things will look different to certain people. So I just put a generic thing in there. Below is a summary of both salaries and employer paid benefits as a member of our educational family. If you have any questions, please let us know. So always make sure you add in that, hey, if you have a question, make sure to ask about it, because this is not a replacement for something like a payroll journal report or your quarterly year-to-date accumulations for an employee. That's going to be exact and specific for that point in time for that employee. So this, you can actually have some estimates go into the compensation statement. I'll talk about that in just a second. You have a pay label and the benefit label. So when you talk about the compensation statement, you have the pay that's part of your compensation statement, and you have all the employer paid benefits that are part of that compensation statement, and they're right on top of each other. So you want really just like a header label. So we'll put wages up there, and I want to make sure I put employer paid benefits on there, because I want them to know these are not just the benefits that the employee pays. These are the benefits that the employer pays along on top of what they pay. So you want to split that out and make sure to spell that out so they know exactly what it is. So you're not going to see anything on there like federal taxes. You're not going to see anything on there like, if they donated, if they had like a garnishment or anything, any of those other non-employer paid deductions, you're not going to see. And then total label, just compensation total. And the leave label. So the leave in compensation statements does not work in a way that makes it easy for everybody to set up. It doesn't just take the value of, or like, how much time available of leave do you have, and then what's your pay rate for that? It doesn't do that for you. All the leave information on your compensation statement is going to need to be manually entered by somebody at your district. That's the worst part of the compensation statement. And that's the worst part of the law that came into effect, because they did specifically say leave paid on there. So I will show you how that works, and maybe a little workaround. Like anything that we do here, there's always a query to make it easier. So we're working on that, and I'll share that for anyone who needs a copy of that a little bit later. So I'll have a leave label. My in this case is going to be estimated value, a leave value as of 6/30/2021. The two check boxes underneath include unposted records. If you're generating this compensation statement before your fiscal year is complete, before you've run all your payrolls for that year, you need to make sure that you check that box. If you don't check that box, what's going to happen is it's only going to show those pay periods that have been posted, that you've run all the way through step 9 and posted. So if you're run it right now, it's going to be incomplete because you're missing, 2 weeks of May, you're missing 4 weeks of June on that compensation statement. But if you want to run it now, if you check that box, what it will do is it will take whatever the value is that you have in your payroll journals, your pay journals, and your, if you've calculated out your benefits for the remainder of the fiscal year, it will pull that information. What you need to make sure is, if you do check that box, and if you do run this before your fiscal year is complete, you need to make sure that someone in payroll has run that compute selected period for the remainder of the year. If you run that and that has not been run, or not been run recently, what's going to happen is it's going to pull in those payroll journals, and it's going to be missing data, or it might have incomplete data. So you want this to be complete as possible. If you're in payroll, hopefully you're running that on a relatively regular basis. As a general rule, I like to say run that at least once a month. I'll show you as soon as we get out of the screen exactly what I'm talking about for those people that don't have to go in there, but I'll show you what that kind of process does. Then the option to show beginning leave value. This is a dollar amount field that's actually in the employee leave plan. We'll take a look at that, and I'll kind of show you again how that kind of figures into your compensation statement. And of course, the leave footer text, because leave might not be the value that a lot of employees think it is. A lot of districts will have a policy saying, well, if you've been with the district 10 or more years, you get 100% payout. If you've been with 5 to 10, you get maybe 80% payout. If you've been less than 5, maybe you get 50% payout. It depends on the district policy. So make sure you put that in there. Leave value, again, it's always an estimate because it's going to pull the beginning leave value dollar amount, which doesn't necessarily reflect what their leave balance may be at that time. So make sure you put in there and then make sure you make it clear that it is just an estimate and it can change depending on whatever the policy of the district or any changes to the employee's leave plan. That's it. That's the setup. That's that setup. That's the generic. Doesn't get much easier than that. Doesn't take very long to set up. You probably do it in about a couple minutes, which is exactly what it took me to do. And once you've done it, you'll never have to go back into that screen again. Now, let me show you really quick when I say compute selected periods. So that whole, that little checkbox says include unposted periods. There's a part of this, and I'm going to run into payroll really quick and just show you. Oh, I'm getting an internet spotty message. Payroll processing, process payroll. Hopefully a lot of you have seen this screen. If you hadn't, guess what? This is the magic behind the scenes that makes sure that you get a paycheck or a direct deposit every 2 weeks. On the actions menu in here, there's an option, compute selected periods. If I click this box, it's going to give me a list of all the unposted pay periods in the remainder of the school year. There's a lot in here. We've been playing around for a little bit. This is a training database. What we would typically recommend is you'll go up to actions, select all of these pay periods, and then go ahead and click OK. Now, there used to be, once upon a time, you used to be able to just kick this off and just walk away because it's one of those things that will take a long time to run. But what this does is this calculates the amount for all the employer side benefits for the remainder of the year. That's why this is important when you check that box that says include unposted pay periods. So all the things like Arizona State retirement, your insurance deductions, all this employer side stuff, they exist in payroll, but they don't exist in your GL until you run this option. So if you run this option, and again, you'll do it at the beginning of the year, and we usually recommend do it every month or so. It just makes sure that as employees terminate or as employees come on or as benefits change, maybe you have some open enrollment changes that happen in qualifying events, things like that. If you run this on a periodic basis, it keeps your employer side deductions a little more accurate compared to what you're actually going to spend for the remaining of the year. So make sure that gets done first. And I'm going to exit out of payroll, go back into HR. So jumping back over. So we set up the generics of the report, the header, the information, the what you call the subtitles and things like that. Next thing you need to do is actually you're going to go ahead and set up the compensation statement categories. What is that information that you're actually pulling into the report? Drill into here. And I've already set up a number of these based off what I have in this training database. Yours might look similar, might look a little bit different, but there are two types of compensations that these categories are going to hold for you. There's a wage compensation type, and then there's a benefit compensation type. And each of these will depend on what you have in your system. And you can make that as detailed or as rolled up as you want it to be. And depending on how you want to actually implement these categories or assign them to your employees and the pay and the deductions might change the way that you do them. I'll kind of show you a couple different options, but the setup for these is relatively easy. Exit out. I'm going to go into, I'm going to say my main wage here. So I have my type, it's wage. Your options are really wage and benefit. That's all you have. You have your category, subcategory, and the sort order. Hopefully by now you're used to seeing sort order at some place within Infinite Visions. The sort order means it will show up on the report in the order that you specify. like always, we try and do our sort orders in increments of 5. So we'll do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, because then if we have like a new funding line or a new benefit and we kind of want to slip it in there somewhere, we don't have to renumber everything just to make room for that new item. So we start with 5. I believe in our garnishments, Carrie likes to say 5 is the new 1. So that's what we kind of do with everything. And it kind of always gives us an extra 4 number spots of space to put in any new wage fund or thing we wanted to. You can assign compensation statements one of 3 ways. You can assign the categories one of 3 ways to your employee. You can choose an account mask. And this is where you do your standard account mask, your question mark logic. You'll put in there whatever funds you want associated with what you consider the main wage for this particular demo. You can do it by pay description. Now, the cool thing about pay description is that this isn't a drop down like you've seen other places within Infinite Visions, where you hit the little drop down and you select teacher 3rd grade science or stipend coaching, things like that. You actually put a description in there and it is sort of search text. So if you put in, say, teacher, it will look for any payroll description that says teacher in it, and that's what it's going to pull in. If you put in 301, it will look for any payroll that says 301 in it, and it will pull that in. We'll assign that compensations category to it. It's kind of cool like that. It can be kind of a double-edged sword. You need to make sure you're specifying close enough to how you want to assign those categories to those payroll to the payroll lines in employee positions. So be very careful about it. And what you will do is first thing, just kind of set up the compensation statement categories that you want for your district. The easy ones, you'll have your main salaries. I've split this off into Prop 301. I have two Prop 301 salary lines, one for performance pay, one for base and class size reduction. I put my federal grant information. I wanted to break out my ESSER, my ESG, federal and state grants. For benefits, kind of the same thing. You'll put your insurance information in here. You could break this out even more if you want to split out like medical insurance, vision insurance, dental insurance. That's an option. It's not required. And this isn't, I'm just going to roll them all up into a general insurance type category and just roll everything into there. ASRS, FICA, workers' comp. These are all of my employer side benefits that I have for my district, or can all fall under these 4 categories. So how do you assign these categories to your employees or to their pay lines? The compensation categories, the compensation statement categories are actually assigned by funding line to each of your employee positions and benefits. We're going to take a look at benefits first because that's the easiest one. So I'm going to close out of here. I will go into deductions and benefits, then deductions and benefits maintenance. I'm going to change my group ID column here to compensation statement category. And I'm just going to open up one of these just so you can see where it is. All right. Right at the top of the deduction, this may be a screen or a field that you've probably skipped over dozens of times in the past as you were setting up new deductions, but there's actually a field in here for compensation statement category. If you've not put in any compensation statement categories, it's always been blank, so there's been nothing to select. But now that we have them in there, we actually have the option to assign the category to the deduction. So if I exit out of here and I hit this drop down, here's all the compensation statement categories that I can assign to this deduction. Do notice that for some reason, they included wage information in these compensation statement categories, even though I'm in a deduction. Just be aware, don't accidentally select a wage item in here. Make sure you select a benefits item. So I'll click go, make sure that's assigned to insurance, and then click OK. Here's the cool thing. If you're doing this for the first time, this makes it a little bit easier. So I have my Arizona State retirement deductions here, but I don't have a compensation statement category for them yet. So I'm going to highlight these 4. There is no mass update in deductions and benefits maintenance. You have to go into each one individually, but you can open up a group at a time. So I'm going to highlight these 4 records, click on the edit button. My compensation statement category, I'm going to choose ASRS. And since I'm all in a group, what's going to happen when I click OK? It's going to automatically assign that same compensation statement to the next record that I have. So I'm just going to click OK, click OK, click OK, and done. So it assigns it to all my categories. This is the easiest part, where you can just go in and assign your category to your employee deductions. And then once you assign it to the deductions, it kind of trickles down to the employee deductions from there. So that's how those are set up. But how do you assign them to positions? How do you assign a compensation statement category to a position and its funding? So if I go into employees, employee position and pay, here's the trick. So I'm just going to open up Candy Bar. Oops, bar. She's one of the people we like to pick on here. So I'm going to open up her employee position. And I'm going to jump over to the pay tab, and down on the funding line, way over on the right-hand side, there's a little drop-down box for compensation statement category. If I hit this drop-down, yeah, I forgot what fund it is. I'm just going to put this in my main compensation statement category. And I actually have the option to lock the compensation statement category. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a few minutes. So if I know this one is very special for this person, so I'm going to lock the compensation statement, I'm going to choose that. I'm actually going to unlock it because I'm going to mess it up later. And then I'm going to click OK. And then wait. Oh, yeah, that's fine. You put in my reason for change. Compensation statement stuff. Okay, so now I've assigned a compensation statement category to that position. Well, what happens, because you need to do it to a lot of positions, there's a lot of work to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my selection. I'm going to change my view to funding detail. And I'm just going to hit, let's do it by account code. Let's just do my M&O. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to put 6,100 in here because I'm looking at, I just want to look at salaries. I don't want to look at like fringe benefits that might have been paid. So I'm going to click apply selection. And now I need to kind of rearrange my grid here. So let's rearrange the grid. So I'm going to rearrange this and change this to compensation statement. And you can only see the compensation statement field on the grid when you're in funding detail. If you're not in funding detail, since this field is tied to the funding detail, you're not going to see it. So make sure you change that. I'm going to change the DAC to account. Okay. And I'm going to change this. I'll just change that to the name. All right, so I'm going to exclude my vacant positions for now, so I don't want to have to worry about them. All right, so now I'm left with a grid full of employee funding lines that have no compensation statement category. So the nice thing about the compensation statement category in here is if you want to choose to assign it this way, you go up to actions, do mass update records. I'm going to choose the compensation statement category out of here. For some reason, this screen, this particular drop down here is not in alphabetical order at all. So you know it starts with C, just hit C until you get to the right one. And I'm going to change the category to wage, mean, reason for change, comp category. Now, the bad thing about when you do this mass update, it's going to do everything that's in the grid. So it's not something you can come in here and you're like, well, I'm going to highlight these 10 records and mass assign to these. you have to filter your grid down to just those items that you want to assign a category to. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and it says, and it'll tell you right up front, this will update all the positions and supplemental pay records displayed in the grid. Do you wish to continue? Now, I always like to laugh. Someone calls, oh, I accidentally updated everybody. It literally tells you it's going to update everybody. I won't fault you if you blow through it. I've seen people in my office do that plenty of times. Like, what did that message read? Oh, I don't know. I just clicked OK. Don't be that person. Take the time, read the message, click yes. And then what it's going to do, it's going to go down into assigning my compensation statement category to all of these positions. The tedious part is, if you do it this way, you have to go through every single, everything that you have in employee positions and pay, and kind of do something similar to what we're doing right now. You just have to break it down, put it in a compensation statement category, mass assign it, and just let the process kind of go through. See, it redid my grid here. So I'm going to go excluding selection, and I should now have compensation statement categories. And I'll have to do this for each group of people or each group of positions I have with employee positions and pay. It's a little tedious. So we'll say that's way number one that you can set up employee salary lines. So what's way number two? I'm going to close out of here. We go back into compensation categories. So I'm going to open up my main line here. Way number two, and this is the way that you used to have to do it. The way I just showed you was the relatively new way. This might be an easier way for you. You can actually come in here and you can put an account mask for that position. So I'm going to do 001, question. And then 61, question. Tab out there. So now I've assigned an account mask for this compensation category. So when I generate my compensation statements, it will automatically attach this category to any employee position funding line that meets this account mask. And it does it in order. So if you have maybe overlapping account masks, maybe you have it as wage main, and then maybe you break it out, maybe you add something else in there, maybe a specific function code under fund 001. As long as that is processed after this one, it will take precedence. It will kind of overwrite whatever's next. So we'll go down by sort order. So it's going to go, all right, what am I assigning to main? Assigns everything with 001 6100. Then I'll process the next compensation category. What's the funding account mask under there? Then I'll process the next one. And it'll just keep on going down through the sort order till you've assigned it to everybody in the position. So what does it look like? I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I actually have a little cheat way. I'm going to assign masks here, because I don't feel like going into each one and doing this over and over again. So now I'm going to open these up because I automatically kind of filled in my account masks here. So I have things like my Prop 301 that I've put in Fund 11 and Fund 13 on this particular one. I have another one with Fund 12. Oops. Say I wanted to point out, all right, what about my ESSER grants? Who I paid ESSER money to? So I'm going to pull out 326, 336. I'll put that information in there if I wanted them to know it. Again, it can be as detailed or as generalized as you want it to be. If you want to specifically say, hey, part of this money is because we happen to have these federal grants to pay for part of your salary. That's the kind of information you can put in here. Same thing with ESG, all the state grants, instructional improvement grant. All that stuff you can put in there, and it will automatically assign these account codes to all those deduction lines or to all those employee pay lines. That's the second way to do it. In my humble opinion, that's probably the easiest way to do it. If you do it the other way where you have to go in employee positions, that is something you have to maintain every time you add a new position or change a new position or change the funding. You need to make sure you maintain that stuff. If there is a way that you can break it out by account code, this makes it a lot easier to manage. The other way you can do it is, I'm going to clear out my categories. Maybe I want to do it a little bit differently. Maybe instead of main, I am going to look for a teacher. And it's not case sensitive at all. So you can put it in however you want. If you have uppercase, lowercase, mixed case, doesn't matter. What it will do is it will look for, if it has the word teacher in there, it will assign this compensation category to it. So maybe if you want a compensation category for your certified staff. So you will put like maybe a teacher in there, you put maybe tutoring in there, break them out into compensation categories, whatever works for your district, easy way to set that up. So click OK. Maybe I can do the same to 301. Maybe I put 301 in here. Depending on, these are dependent upon the position descriptions for those items it's attaching to. So as long as it has the numbers 301 in there, and again, this isn't going to differentiate between performance pay and base pay. It's just going to say if it has 301 in there, it's going to assign this compensation category to them. That's the third way to do it. Let me go back and reset my stuff here. I'm going to generate them based off of account lines. Let me just make sure that I added those back in there correctly. Yep. Okay. So I have my account masks in there. All right. The last thing you need to worry about, the employee leave amounts. Now, I think there's some ambiguity about what it means by paid leave. One interpretation is your beginning leave balance payout. What would it look like if you had whatever your beginning leave is for that year, if you paid that out? If we go into employees and employee leave plans, and let me find Candy Bar. Pull up her leave, and she has some time under 12-month personal, so I'm going to open that up. Let's see, make sure I can get this all on the screen here. Okay, there is a field over here on the right-hand side, value of beginning. This is the dollar amount field that will pull into your compensation statements for leave plans. It is $0. There is no automated thing that will populate this at all. There is no action item. There is no button you can click that will put a dollar amount in there. Someone has to go in there and manually put in a dollar amount. The general idea being what you're looking at is you're going to take your beginning balance, 16, multiplied by your pay rate, 37.46, and come up with a dollar amount that you can then plug into the value of beginning. Sorry, I can't draw very well. So I'm sorry my drawings look like a 2-year-old that's had too much sugar. Since this is a manual process, this is probably one of the more difficult ones to kind of implement on a school district level, because not only do you need to calculate this, you're going to be limited, or I don't want to say limited, you're going to be influenced by whatever your district policy is for the payout of that leave plan. For example, if your district has a policy that says, well, if you have a leave balance over X amount of dollars, you're capped at 10,000. Or if you have, if you've been here for more than 10 years, you get 100% payout. If you've been here for 5 years, you get 50% payout, things like that. Things that are specific to your district are going to influence the dollar amount that you put in here. I think that's probably why this is a manual field for entry, and why it's going to, it really kind of hampers the utility of being able to print this information on here. But like I said earlier, before we got started, what all things there is a workaround. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Save that. Go in here, and we actually have a query that we have that we started working on. Like I said, Glendale Union called us a couple of weeks ago. They were having this, they don't want to go in and touch every employee. So we kind of made something up here. We're still kind of working on it specifically for them, but I will share this with you guys. If anyone wants a copy, if we host your information, let us know. We could do something similar for you. And what this is doing is it's just going to take the leave plan and update the beginning leave value with whatever their pay rate is times their daily rate, or I'm sorry, by whatever their balance is. So I'm going to re-query this grid here. And what was I in? Personal. So now you can see I have a value of beginning here, which is really just both the current rate versus whatever their beginning balance is. Where it could get weird is it is not equal to whatever their current amount is. So you can see right here that they only have 12 days available, but the value of the beginning was calculated off the 16 that is back here at the beginning rollover balance. Noemi, did you have a question? It says here you raised your hand.
Yes, I wanted to find out if this can be imported in an Excel.
No, it cannot. There is no import feature for this. There is a Tyler webinar on how to generate compensation statements that I did happen to watch and prep for this. And they were talking about, wow, we would really like the ability to import this. That webinar was in the later half of 2019 and it's still not done. So don't hold your breath is what I'm trying to say. It's going to be, someone's just going to have to put in the effort. Noemi, you happen to work at a district that we host, so we could help you in kind of populating that. If you want to give us a call at some point, we can help you kind of populate that information. We'll talk through some business rules for that. So I'm going to leave this value of beginning in here. Once you've keyed in that information for the employee leave plans, you are ready to generate your compensation statements. Here's a couple things you need to be aware of. Compensation statements, the moment you generate a compensation statement, it is immediately available for someone to see on your iVisions portal for any of your employees. Kind of like your W-2, well, the way your W-2s used to be, and then they made you put that checkbox in there that says publish to portal. Well, before that, you used to, if you accidentally generate, or if you generate your W-2s, employees go, oh, look, my W-2's out there, but it's not ready yet. Compensation statements are still like that, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to my portal here. And I'm logged in as our host or admin, either one, as long as you have editing rights. And, oh, I still disable it. So I'm going to go up here to pages. I wonder if it logged me out. That's not where I wanted to go. All right, let me go back home here. I think it logged me out. Yep, it did. And this is a DNN9 portal. So this is the last version of this look. If you have the new one, the employee access portal, it looks a bit different. I'll have to control that in a different way, but most of the people we work with still have this. So I'm going to go to the pages. There we go. Under pay and tax information, total compensation. I'm going to edit my page settings. And right now for this, I'm just going to make sure that display in menu is turned off. So that means it just won't show up in the menu, which is what I did already just for testing. I forgot to turn it back on. So I'm going to make sure that that's turned off. Click save. Go back into my compensation statement setup. Under the actions menu, there's an option that says generate statements. Going to click that. It runs really quick though. It's not just because this is a training database, but it is legitimately fast. Click OK. And then click OK to save that. Now you can actually go into the compensation statement summary screen. There's not a whole lot you can do in it, but you can actually go in there and you kind of see how the wages and benefits break out. So if I open this up, it is a data only grid. I can see, I don't know why, but the column headers here all say the same thing. It doesn't actually break it down to what it's going to show on the compensation statement. But looking at here, I can see that I do have wage categories split up and I have employer paid benefits split up. I have my total compensation information. If I go into leave plans, I'll see leave plan information in here as well, all the dollar amounts for those leave plans. You can't change anything in there. It's just for viewing only. So it is what it is. Compensation statement. This is where you're actually going to print out particular compensation statements for your employees. So I'm going to just say Caldwell, I think Caldwell. I forgot how to spell her name. Caldwell. There it is. You can print this for all of your employees or just a group or a particular person on demand. Printing out the compensation statement, kind of show you what it looks like here. It has all my wage information here. This one only had one wage category associated with her position, or they all kind of rolled up into the one. So she doesn't have a breakout of like 301 or ESSER information, things like that. So hers just has the one. It does break out her employer paid benefits, her insurance, ASRS, FICA, workers' comp, all the employer portions. This is not the employee portions. Then it has your compensations total at the bottom, and then the estimated value of your leave plan as of 6/30/2021, like we showed in the setup. It has a dollar amount here. If you scroll down to the bottom, that's where it has that text where it says leave value is an estimate only, and the value is subject to policy limitations. You could either print these out, send them to your employees. You can publish them back on the portal. Once, like I said, once they are generated, they're going to show up on the portal. So if I went back into my portal, go to edit this page setting, display in menu, click save. Go in here, and now that shows total compensation at the bottom of my screen. You do have to make sure, and I'm going to edit this page really quick. Well, when unlocked, you want to exit mode. Let's go to pages then. Go to my total compensation settings. Oh, that's not where it needed to be. No, her. Ah, there it is. Go into my module information. And I need to make sure that it's pointing to the correct fiscal year. That's the last thing that you need to do. Once it's pointing to the correct fiscal year, just like W-2s, it's one of those things you need to make sure that you update in iVisions every year. This is just another one of those things, or otherwise it's just going to show old compensation statement information. If you have the new portal, the new employee access portal, this is managed from within Infinite Visions. There's a drop-down box in security, workflow configuration, Tyler ESS settings is the screen you would go into. And there's like four modules you would choose from, and you just make sure the one for compensation statements are on there. And then I'll close out of here. And now people can get their compensation statements. And that really is all there is to it. There's not a whole lot of setup involved. There are some things that we've kind of developed to try and make it a little bit easier for us. Again, if you're interested in, if you're a district that we host and you're interested in the beginning leave plan value update, let us know, shoot an email over to FSS. The timing that you want to do that is very key because you don't know if you want to do it right now or wait until the end of the fiscal year to do it. Other items such as compensation statement categories, like I said, there's the 3 ways to do it. You can either go in by employee position and by the funding detail. If I go back in there and I'll show you really quick. Employee positions and pay. Look at the funding detail. And the funding detail screen is extremely slow. It's probably one of the slowest running screens in all of Infinite Visions, just by the sheer amount of data that it has to pull in. So I try not to open that screen too much, but I just wanted to show you that putting in that account masks, generating the information, all of my accounts in here for all of my positions are now assigned an account mask. I can scroll through here. That I just saw some that I missed out on. So, screw up here. All right, so I have a couple changes. Let me see the account. Let me see which ones. All right, so there was a couple here that was blank, and the reason for that, if I look at the account code, they are 6,200. They were leave payouts and vacation payouts. Remember when I put in my account mask, I explicitly put in 6,100. You can put in an additional sort of wage or benefit or salary category and point it to 6,200. If you want to include items like this on the compensation category, you're welcome to do so. You just need to make sure you have the right account masks within your compensation statement categories to set that up. And it's easy enough. That's it. That's all there is to it. I managed to take a 20-minute topic and stretch it into close to an hour. So congratulations to me for that. I will break my arm, patting myself on the back. Are there any questions on what we've kind of gone through today? If anyone wants to ask about documentation, there isn't any. There was some documentation on the Tyler webinar. I was like, oh, cool. I'll hand that out to everybody. And then I opened that up yesterday and like, this documentation sucks. I am not going to hand this out to anybody. So there isn't any documentation for it. But luckily, hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have this video up on YouTube along with the other one for work calendars that I'm still kind of trudging through right now. I'll have this up later. If you're not on the EASE mailing list, make sure that you get on that EASE mailing list so that make sure you get updated. If you're on our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. I'll say it like all the YouTuber stuff. So make sure you do that. A question. If this is an end of year statement, then why are we using beginning balance for the leave value? That's a good question. So if I couldn't tell you, as to some of the reasons why. I don't know why some of the fields work the way that they do. I can tell you that that is the field that we have. And so that's what we're putting in there. If you look at the text of the bill itself, like I said, it's kind of not very specific on exactly what it's asking for. It just says leave payout. Okay, is that items that you've actually paid out the employee? And that is that money that would be due to the employee if they terminated today? It's that money that is, was at the beginning of the year, because you can kind of manipulate that dollar amount to really kind of show whatever you want it to be. So if your policy is, if you leave today, we will pay out 100% of your vacation time today, then you could probably make an argument for populating that field with whatever their current available balance is. Maybe that's a more accurate assessment of what that is. Other than that, I don't have an answer for you. It's relatively new enough. Then if we don't, the question, so it came up the statement, if we don't pay anything out except at retirement, we just use zero amount. Yes. Again, I guess that's going to depend on the interpretation of the statute that came out. Retirement versus termination. So if I retire, I get that money, but if I'm terminated, I don't. Or if I just leave the district, maybe I left to go work for another district, or maybe I went to go work for the county superintendents. I hear the people over there are okay. So I guess you can make an argument for leaving that zero. You really don't need a dollar amount in there until the time that you generate those compensation statements, because once you generate that, depending on why you generate it the way that it is, it could change next week if the employee decides to put in 2 weeks worth of vacation or they got really sick. Do you still recommend using the second example? So that's the amount with the account masks. I really lean towards that. And then the reason I lean towards that is it makes it a lot easier to manage this kind of stuff. So you always try to take the path of least resistance when you have a lot of work to do. So if you have 1,000 employee position lines that meet this certain criteria, update those 1,000 lines and then go back and manually change those ones you need to do. For example, I've assigned this my main wage line, but maybe I'm looking at this like, I really don't want that. Maybe I want something different. I can drill into this position. And thank you for bringing that question up. That's gonna loop us back around to something we saw momentarily as soon as this position opens up. There we go. I'll go into position pay, scroll over to the right-hand side. Oh, and I'll automatically lock that out. So I guess that is the drawback for that. For those items, let me go back to that page, back to the other one. Let's see this, if this locked this out. I did forget about that. Once you put an account mask in there, it locks out that setting on the employee position funding detail. Let's see if it locked it out on here as well. Nope, it locked it out on here. So because I had the account mask in here, the account mask is running all this stuff. So I would still really kind of lean towards that because it makes it easier to kind of update this in the long run. But again, it's really whatever works for your district. Try and, whatever you have a lot of positions. If you have good position control and you have sort of standardized descriptions that make it easy to find certain pay types, you can use other items like the pay description search filter or the matching search filter on there. That works really well. Or if you have a way that you can filter down this grid to just those items you want to update, the mass update works really well. So everything kind of works. It really kind of depends. Someone asked, what's your YouTube channel? I'm not subscribed currently. Look for MCSS Finance. It's MCSS Finance. And we have all of our mini sessions on there. If you are subscribed to our mailing list, I will send you an email with the video link, and then you can look at the channel there and you can go ahead and subscribe. And most of them I'll send an email out within a couple of days after I get it going. Good questions. Any other questions? Does this setup read from year to year? We have already rolled careers. Okay, so cool. This one I actually played around with yesterday just to confirm, but I did all my setup in this fiscal year in 2021. If I log into 2022, all that setup is there. So if you set up, it does do a cross year. So if I'm going to scroll on down here, and I believe it was in this screen. If you look down at the bottom here, and that's going to be set up in your general ledger default settings. There's an option in there as to what you want your compensation statement. If you change it in this year, it will put it in next year. However, if you create it in next year, it's not going to put it back in this year. The way it's set up right now, the way I have it set up is for next year, so it rolls forward. So set it up in your current, make sure that's set up, and you will know once you go in here, because it tells you right at the bottom how this is set up. Make sure it's set up to next year. Go ahead and put it in 2021. It will create itself in 2022. Save yourself a lot of trouble the next time you go around to generating these statements. When is the compensation statement due? There is no date associated with it. The only information on there is that it is required each fiscal year. So whether at the beginning of the fiscal year or the end fiscal year, which to be honest, let's not kid ourselves, it's the same days. I mean, yeah. You will get a better snapshot of what you've paid if you run it at the end of the year, though. You'll have a more accurate snapshot at the very least. So I would probably, maybe this is a first of the year type thing you give to your staff as they're coming back into the office. So that's the way I'm leaning towards it. Any other questions? Lots of great questions, everybody. Well, if you come up with any more, you think of any other items that you have any questions about, just shoot us an email. We'll be happy to go ahead and answer your question, either myself or someone from my team. We'll be happy to get back to you. You can email me directly at mike.martinez@maricopa.gov, or you can email the entirety of our staff for financial system support at fss@maricopa.gov, and we will be happy to answer your questions for you. Thank you, everybody. Again, if you're interested in the query about updating the thing and we don't host you, updating that beginning lead balance, I'll go ahead and send that over to you. Let me know. Shoot me an email. Have a great weekend. Everyone oh God, it's Monday. I forget. We're all screwed up. I guess have a great week. Suffering until you get to the weekend part. Have a good one. The school year's almost over, everybody. Be safe out there. Take care. Thank you.